Hey guys, welcome back. So now getting into the conclusion of the whole Thanos baby craziness, we finally get a much better look at how Thanos would have turned out had he been raised by Frank Castle, the Cosmic Ghost Rider. And so as we get into this, I really want to share my thoughts on Donny Cates' execution of writing this, as well as some of the things that this series has foreshadowed to kind of get us ready for the next adventure right around the corner. But first, if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to catch the spills every week, and don't forget to hit that bell up top so we can squat up in the comments for the first hour. Alright, so along this journey that we've been discussing with Frank Castle as the Cosmic Ghost Rider, who had consciously made the decision after being restored by Odin to go back, and initially with the intent of assassinating young Thanos, but after coming face to face with him in that moment, he couldn't bring himself to do it and he decided to take it upon himself and really try to raise him to be a better man. And along that path, there's been some bumps in the road, of course, just because with Frank Castle, it's never really just that easy. But on top of that, with having this baby Thanos with him, he would come into dilemmas whether he would explain what he was trying to do, which entailed telling those people like who he's trying to get help from, like Galactus for example, some of the things that this child would later do in order to get help from these people, but that always led to a dead end, because once these people had found out what this child will become, then they wanted to kill him. And Frank Castle just wasn't having that. But also with creating this alternate timeline, you then had your alternate future, which brought forth your alternate Guardians of the Galaxy. And this was a bit of foreshadowing in a number of ways. And two of the most significant were, it was almost like Donny Cates was showing us that at some point in time, these people will still become who they are, even in an augmented form, but that just follows suit to the augmented timeline. And secondly, the appearance of the Guardians of the Galaxy here is a bit of foreshadowing for what's around the corner for Cosmic Ghost Rider. But much like we had talked about in the previous video, where Cosmic Ghost Rider had pretty much taken them all out with the addition to a number of countless other heroes in order to spare the life of this young baby Thanos, with Cable being the last standing, the killing blow is then delivered by the grown Thanos, who has come back in time just to be sure that these people who came from his future, that they were all completely done for. But in addition, he wants them to go with him into the future in order to protect himself from this ever happening again. And even though this Thanos assures Frank and the younger baby Thanos that he's not a cosmic serial killer and him coming back in time is for their rescue, Frank has still kind of always had it in the back of his mind, like, man, I'm doing my best, but I don't know if it's necessarily working. Because even as a baby, Thanos still showed many signs of just turning out the same way. But when they step into that alternate future, it straight up looked like they stepped into Smallville. That was totally worth it. But no, the thing, when Frank Castle had seen this, he had thought to himself like, man, it was really worth it. And I'm not talking about the Smallville intro, but just the whole idea of trying to raise Thanos different, just in hopes that so many people wouldn't suffer just because of his existence. And for Frank, just a glimpse of that literally brought tears to his eyes. But also keep in mind, in this future, there is no Cosmic Ghost Rider. And the reason why, this older Thanos goes on to explain that they had found a solution to separating the spirit of vengeance and the power cosmic from Frank Castle, which as a result made him human again, and from there he just died of old age, presumably happy and just at peace and truly given the opportunity to live his best life. But moments after seeing this, Frank turns around and he takes a look and he sees the other side of the full truth, which as the reader we much more expected to pretty much see, being that the Guardians of the Galaxy had came back from some type of future where they had rebelled from. And as it turned out, that just behind them, beyond this Smallville utopia-like place if you will, there was the rest of the world, and in what is clearly New York. And man, I tried to tell y'all the other night on Twitter what was going on with that blue light, and even on Instagram, but hey, it might be connected, might not, who knows. And it was in Queens too, where the Punisher's from? Come on. But lo and behold, in this future, Thanos had pretty much punished everyone who did not agree with the new order that he had seen fit in the perspective of how he believed the world should be. And this is a perspective that he had growing up in this new timeline out of the consequence of being raised by the Punisher. And even with Frank trying to show a better example, it always led to him having to slaughter people just to protect Thanos. But at the same time, it raised him into a man who believed that that was the only answer, or even more so, punishment was the only answer to anyone who didn't align line with his beliefs. And in the defense of Thanos, he tells Frank in order to protect the younger version of him and his wife, who he had saved and brought here, so they could also live without harm under his safeguard. And when Frank sees this, he goes through a number of emotions. He's like, first, this isn't real, this isn't right. Like, if they're here, how do I even exist? Like, it's a total mind trip. And with the people within the city who are being punished for their disobedience, like, this is something that Frank Castle would never do. And while Thanos gives the argument that people are who they are, Frank responds like, no, I am what I am because you made me a monster. Which is true from his death to his deal with Mephisto to his deal with Galactus. Like, Thanos low-key created the Cosmic Ghost Rider. And after all of that and everything that Frank has tried to change, he finds himself back in the same place, presented with the same opportunity to work by Thanos' side like we had seen in Thanos Wins, and he realizes that no matter what, that Thanos will continually bring him to the same conclusion. And even with the order of some of the ingredients changed, the sum of it all eventually brings them back to the same place. But even though Frank sees that Thanos has proven this for himself, Frank doesn't believe that he has to make that same decision. And instead of making this same deal with Thanos, much like we had seen back when Frank and Galactus were defeated, he decides to prove himself that change is possible, that we're not locked into this certain destiny, and that as individuals we have the power to make a different decision and truly change the course of where our future may go. And with Frank deciding to take on the Thanos of this future, he looks to the younger Thanos and he tries to explain to him that, look, that's not who you have to be. And at this point, he has told baby Thanos this like 1,000 times. And when he replies telling Frank that he doesn't understand, what's important to see here is that it's in this very moment that Frank realizes that he has to do something about the both of them. And so when he takes the fight to the Thanos of this future, it's then that we realize that the Cosmic Ghost Rider of this time, that Frank was told became human again and just died of old age, that was a lie. And this Thanos tells him that Frank had also rebelled, which then led to Thanos killing him. And on the surface, it kind of made it feel like Thanos was playing this mind game of, okay, you say no one really changes, but then again, here you go doing the same thing again. Because the version of you from this timeline, he rebelled and so are you doing the same thing. And when you did so, you failed and I killed you. But what I love in this moment, and just more credit to Donny Cates, just brilliant writing, because I cannot stand a bunch of action with no purpose, and this definitely isn't that. But when it comes to the point of where Frank has just blasted Thanos with the power cosmic with no restraint, that for Thanos has only blown his clothes off and it didn't kill him, this leads Frank to end him with penance, and not so much with the penance stare, because we've seen in Thanos Wins that doesn't work, because in order for it to be effective, the person who stares into the eyes of the spirit of vengeance has to feel some form of regret, because that's where the connection's made and they feel the suffering of every single victim that they've done harm to. But in this case, making yet another change, and after hitting Thanos with the full power cosmic, Frank makes a change and hits him with the full fire of the spirit of vengeance. And so to better understand this, because some people will say, Thanos, he can take it. No, he can't. Like, if you're truly true to the origin of the spirit of vengeance, there's no way. But to better understand this, I did a video on the origin of the spirit of vengeance and how powerful it truly is back when we talked about Ghost Rider 1 million BC. And I got a link down in the description if anyone needs a refresher on that, because once you truly understand where it came from and that everyone after has only borrowed it, including Mephisto, including any other Ghost Rider, and even including Zarathos, you'll have a better understanding on how powerful it actually is. And I already know that this is going to be one of those things that fuels the debate of what would have happened in World War Hulk had that Ghost Rider not just turned away, allowing the Hulk to continue his rampage, and had truly went full force to try and stop him. And I'm gonna go ahead and nip this in the bud before y'all go crazy in the comments, which I'm pretty sure y'all gonna do anyway. And I don't mind that until people start getting rude and I gotta start blocking people, but that's a whole nother thing. I make these videos so we can have these conversations. But back in World War Hulk, where Johnny Blaze pulled up on one of what is arguably the strongest Hulks or strongest versions of the Hulk, and that argument is mainly between World War Hulk and Heart of the Monster. And I'm gonna let you guys light that up in the comments as well. But when Johnny Blaze pulled up on this Hulk and more or less got smashed, this was mainly because he had been going back and forth with the Hulk trying to reason with him, and World War Hulk at this point was so far beyond the point of just talking. And because any Ghost Rider who just borrows this power, and they're just a vessel sampling power from Zarathos who had stolen the power from the spirits of vengeance, their bodies, much like what we had seen with Cosmic Ghost Rider, can be destroyed. But if any Ghost Rider had actually allowed the full wrath of the spirits of vengeance to flow through them, then that would have been a whole different story. And more specifically at the time, Daniel Way, who wrote this particular issue, I believe that he knew and Greg Pak knew what would have really happened had the Ghost Rider truly let loose. Because when this Hulk defeated Johnny Blaze, who was trying to reason with him, Dr. Strange also made the point of the Ghost Rider's weakness is that part of him is human. And when this Hulk had defeated Johnny Blaze and Zarathos took over, I strongly believe that the writers knew how this would have went down. And with keeping it 100 and just being true to the history of both of these characters, the Ghost Rider who was being piloted by Zarathos just looked at him and he rode away. Because in full scope, had World War Hulk ended here, it'd have been a terrible story, with the Hulk returning for vengeance and just getting burned to a crisp. And we even find out that at the time, Zarathos understood that the Hulk came back for vengeance, and him leaving was no form of retreat, but rather it was Zarathos agreeing with the Hulk and pretty much saying that the Earth's heroes, they have this coming. And so getting back to Cosmic Ghost Rider, when he incinerates Thanos, he makes it clear that this just isn't your regular Pyro show. In fact, he let Thanos know, like, you have no idea how much I hold back just to make sure I'm not destroying worlds just by walking. And that's one of the things just about the spirit of vengeance in general. I don't think people really understand how powerful it really is, which is something that Frank has been learning little by little along the way. And throughout his time from becoming Ghost Rider to then becoming Cosmic Ghost Rider and so on, he's only tapped deeper and deeper into that. And so at this point, with Thanos is just blood and dust, the Hope Summers of this future comes to Frank looking for Cable and gives Frank a box to give to Cable, which has a device which will allow him to time jump. And Frank just takes it because she don't need to know that he's dead right now. And things at this point are really complicated enough to get into all that. And so he takes the box and goes back to get the baby Thanos, to whom his younger self is just playing with and have a good time. And I love that when he gets him, that his wife, his younger wife, recognizes him for just a moment just before he takes the little baby Thanos and goes away. I love that little touch. But for his method of resolving and getting rid of this alternate timeline, he ends up bringing back the baby Thanos back to his original time just seconds after he had first taken him, and this way allowing his life to take the course that it would originally take, so that when he gets older, well, he'll just deal with him then. But upon leaving, he's met by Mistress Death, who is still wearing the wedding dress that we had seen in Thanos Wins, in which that alone just kind of shows us that Death can't be killed, even though other writers have chosen to disagree in the past. But if you ask me, how Death gonna die? Come on. like just hold up, you got too much dip on your chip. But rather, I like how Donny Cates handled this, because not only did Death not die with these alternate timelines, but with Death existing beyond time and age, we're then presented with the possibility that her knowledge is beyond linear, so that when she appears to Frank, when Frank takes the Thanos baby back, she recalls all the events of Thanos Wins, Thanos Legacy, Marvel Legacy, Infinity Wars, and also Cosmic Ghost Rider. And in my opinion, it's a tricky place to categorize her, but it feels right, because I would go as far to say that Death is nigh omniversal, being able to exist outside of these alternate realities without dying, because with her you can't kill what's not alive. And as far as universe 10011, which is the Cancerverse, because nothing here can actually die, she's liable to be omitted, and mainly because the many angled ones who invaded that universe made it so that no one could actually die, which eventually was fatal for the death of that reality. So for that reason, I guess there wasn't too much dip on the chip, I guess. But in this case, with this Death returning back to this time and having this talk with Frank, she pretty much thanks Frank for teaching Thanos how to kill, which makes it now almost as if Frank has created the monster instead of vice versa. And when Frank asks her to just leave him alone, she says no, because she chooses many children who cause death, and Frank Castle is no exception. But just to be clear, with this Cosmic Ghost Rider conclusion, what this does in relation to Thanos Wins, in relation to Thanos Legacy, and even going back into Infinity Wars, is one, this resets the timeline before Frank Castle was born, before the Punisher, before Thanos Wins, and it allows everything to play out as we had seen it all the way through to where Thanos had went back in time, only to be killed by Gamora during the events of Infinity Wars, with just one thing different, which I'll get to in a little bit. But with everything else pretty much intact, and this Cosmic Ghost Rider universe, universe, which is a contained universe, and the TRN designation of this universe I cannot remember at the moment, because those usually designate your temporary realities. But with both of these realities gone, and us resuming with Infinity Wars and moving forward, everything is kept intact, with the addition of Cosmic Ghost Rider still existing in the main Marvel universe from the time that Thanos was a child. And from that time till present day, we may or may not see what was going on with him. Fingers crossed that we do. But I do believe that before Thanos died, when he first traveled back to the present, just before he was killed by Gamora, when he went to visit Mephisto, telling him to never mess with Frank Castle, pretty much attempting to never let Frank Castle ever become Cosmic Ghost Rider, that instead, this put Frank Castle at the top of Mephisto's wish list, and maybe number 2 right below Silver Surfer. Okay, somewhere between Silver Surfer and Spider-Man and Deadpool, they all up there. But with Thanos making this request to Mephisto, who at the time didn't know who Frank Castle was, that this then set in order the destiny of Frank Castle, so to speak, for him to become a Ghost Rider, and then at some point, one way or another, eventually obtain the power cosmic. But in addition to this time-displaced Cosmic Ghost Rider, who still exists in the main continuity, with him coming from another reality, which is ultimately another universe, I would even go as far to say he's not so much subject to the fate of the Frank Castle of this universe, mainly because of his jumps to multiple realities, but we'll see where that goes. But as far as where he's at now, as far as close to your present time, and more so during your events of Infinity Wars, when he goes to the body of Thanos really to pay his last disrespects, and as a result he ends up running into Eros, who's the brother of Thanos, who has come here to retrieve from his corpse his will and testament, which of course is one thing of many that I'm sure we'll see play out later on as we get into the future of Cosmic Ghost Rider from here forward and more of his galactic adventures as he joins the Guardians of the Galaxy. And man, I can't wait to get into that, especially when he sees the Silver Surfer again, who probably won't know anything about their dance in the future past, but it'll just be an interesting moment in my opinion, or at least I hope so. But that'll do it for this one, guys. I know it was a lot to unwrap in this one, but I just felt like all of it was necessary. But be sure to leave all your thoughts in the comments below, and we'll do it again on the next one. Alright, later.